All right, so it would be amazing if you could turn on your cameras if you're here, one last time to see your faces before we eventually meet in Tilburg, hopefully one day. Welcome to Online Data Collection and Management, the final lecture. And I have updated the slide deck. So, maybe you took a peek at it before, but if you haven't had the chance yet, I'll just post the link to the latest deck and I'll walk you through the course summary. Just like with data preparation and workflow management, I'll first summarize this course and give you a couple of what I consider important takeaways. And then we'll walk through the exam questions. And if there's time left in today's stream, I'm happy to take your questions for the project. So let's get going. Use the chat like always. And if you haven't done so, please go and check out the details for the exam preparation in this link. So this is my agenda. So I'll first summarize the course and I'll give you a little bit of outlook of how I think you could use these skills in your future. And we'll talk about the course evaluation, exam prep, and I'll take your remaining questions. Okay, so why this course, right? So this again is like visualization of the curriculum of the marketing analytics program here at Tilburg, right? And we have a whole bunch of stuff on offer for analysis, like market assessment, conjoint survey, custom analytics, you name it. So many things are going on. But, for data collection, actually, they're just like, there's just one other course that is concerned with data collection, which is experimental research. Of course, I warmly recommend everybody to follow. But, with experimental research, we got a couple of issues, right? Like maybe we have like small sample sizes because we need to invite participants to the lab. And, maybe it's a little harder to study real events, right? Because, you have to invite people to the lab, so it's very difficult to also study timely issues, many things like this, right? So it's not that surprising that web data became a big thing in marketing, just because it allows you to, study big things in a timely manner. Just, as data is on the web, you can take it and study it. And that's why this course is here. And that's why it's been introduced in this curriculum. So, and it is positioned at the very, very start of the program too, because it is also at the start of your research workflow, right? So first you got to get an understanding about a business problem that you want to study and then collect data on it. So what are my lessons learned? And what, maybe are your lessons learned in this course? Why should we use web data? A first fact is that in marketing, at least, articles that use web data are more impactful than articles that do not use web data. It doesn't really have to do with web data per se, but it may have to do with the characteristics of web data, right? So like I said, because I can study stuff as soon as it becomes available on the internet, which is like in real time, I can be much closer to what's happening in the world right now and study this, right? You can explore novel phenomena. And I've seen, a couple of you guys exactly do that. So for example, the team that monitors the chat at Twitch, right? That's some new stuff, right? I mean, the use of emoticons, smileys have been around all the time, but this explosion of emoticons that are being used in live streams, that's something interesting to capture. And, maybe we got to say something about it. You can boost your ecological value. What does that mean? Boosting ecological value means you can get closer to the metrics and the thinking that managers have in the industry, right? So if you talk about Amazon Valence or TripAdvisor, ratings, that is something managers are honestly concerned because it drives demand. So rather than using some artificial measures constructed in the lab, you could just take the things that managers already care about and thereby really contribute to something that's meaningful and ecologically valid, of ecological value. Web data is also extremely cool to make method advancements. And that's really for the tech people here and the tech people in the research field. So for example, when I buy retailing data to analyze this data, the data comes at the monthly level. sometimes at the weekly level, right? With web data, I can study things at the hourly level or at the daily level. This is important because it helps me to solve some of my econometric issues that I encounter when I analyze my data. Don't want to go so much in depth, but it's really cool to do this. The other thing is, like, web data facilitates method advancement because the data on the web was so different than the data we used to study in marketing, right? Now we got like images and videos, emoticons, right? This is different data. And the marketing field is just breaking grounds to analyze textual data. They haven't like yet fully gotten at video data or the use of emoticons or whatsoever, right? So there's whole stuff, like a whole new world we need to kind of explore and develop methods for it. And then also you can enhance inferences. What does that mean? Because you can get better data, you can measure effects more precisely. Like in technical terms, you decrease the standard error, which means like you have more precise estimates of effect sizes. Yeah, and that is pretty cool from a research perspective too. But like, as probably most of you encountered, web data can be challenging. So what have been challenges for you guys as you embarked on this journey? I'm curious to hear your opinion. What were your challenges? Describe them, please. Right, so you visited, or you've been on campus for the first lecture, and then I don't know, you opened the first tutorial, and then what? What were the challenges that you encountered? I doubt that there haven't been any challenges. All right, so like, yeah, Luke, shoot it.
Keeping up.
Keeping up. Oh, sorry, man. Yeah. Keeping up. But why?
That was a challenge. But,
yeah, it was okay. I see that.
I had zero experience. What is it? 6-7 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a challenge to start learning Python and R and GitHub and all that stuff at the same time. But now when I look back to what I was 6-7 weeks ago, I'm kind of happy with the with the improvements. So
yeah, you can be proud of like the achievements. Like 8 weeks ago you didn't know this existed, right? Yeah, cool. And Max is also having a good comment, right? So everything is different. Like every website is different. So yeah, like deep prep, right? Scraping is not a fixed process. It's a flexible toolkit, and you need to explore like what works and what doesn't. Actually, I just recently rediscovered one of the building blocks on Tilburg Science Hub. Challenges web scraping. Ooh, it doesn't work. Web scraping, where is it? Because avoid getting blocked while scraping. So this is an issue, right? I'll just post this in the chat, and we have a couple of solutions that you can implement. Probably they're very basic, so you want to actually like improve the page, which you can. But yeah, it's very challenging. Happens to me all the time. Like colleagues ask me to help them scrape. What was it? Not Indeed. Like, yeah, some website. I forgot which name it was, but and I couldn't get it to work because I was being blocked all the time. So yeah, happens to me all the time. And yes, I mean, probably the challenges can be divided into buckets. One is like the technical knowledge to master these challenges, and you've all come a great way to master many of those challenges. And the other challenge, which has not been that documented yet, is the conceptual thinking that is involved to navigate the design choices and the legal risks in building your scraper. And that is what this course seeks to add also to your curriculum, is to give you that conceptual thinking, because you can go out there and just do a quick and dirty scrape of any website, but the data that you get is meaningless. You can't use the data. It's not, you're not fully exploiting the value of the data, right? So I hope that you see these two dimensions of scraping, because everybody on the web will talk about the first challenge, and all the tutorials you'll find out there are only about the first challenge and not about the conceptual thinking. So if there's one thing that you need to remember from scraping, is to always consider the methodological framework in combination with technical tutorials, right? Never let it go, because this is an important lesson. And I wish I would have had access to such a framework when I started out years ago. Good. So, and this is the framework, and I'm not promoting it because I developed it, but because I think it's useful, right? So in scraping, the most important thing is that you balance the validity of your research. That's the most important thing from a research perspective, with the technical feasibility of your scraper and the occurrence of any illegal and ethical risks, right? And you never can solve these things 100%. There's always a delicate balance, right? So you want to get data on the entire population of users of a particular website, but that's not technically feasible because it's going to take you 10 years to extract the data while obeying the extraction limit imposed by the API provider. It's like a classical problem that you have. And then what? Like, you know, how do you solve that challenge? Well, you solve that challenge through making smart design choices and arguing what really is important. Well, maybe you don't really need the full sample size, right? Maybe randomly sampling is enough. But then how is random sampling possible on a website if you don't have access to the entire population? And then you come in and you, I don't know, you try some searches, you try monitoring some pages, you build a database with Cs, right? Like you can probably give an entire course without not even touching the technical things and just talking about these like possible ways in which you can construct a scraper. So this framework should be center stage also when you prepare for the exam, to understand and really appreciate the balance of this. And then let's dig deeper on the challenges of this framework, right? And the first challenge really arises long before you start collecting your data, and it arises with data source selection. Like most people that scrape, they go to Amazon.com or TripAdvisor, and then they just get some data, or Yelp for that matter. But you know, sometimes that data is just not the best data to take, right? Like, why do we need to go to the most dominant platform? Maybe there are aggregators that, you know, make our life simpler because we can gather multi-platform data, right? So sometimes, you know, I always like use this Social Blade example, right? So why scrape data from YouTube? There are probably good reasons, right? If I can get like aggregate data on like, I don't know, on all of those platforms, all at Social Blade, right? So sometimes this is way easier. You can also assume the perspective of different stakeholders, right? So for example, you may want to build some insights about, let's say, TripAdvisor, right? And let's assume TripAdvisor blocks you from scraping. Well, maybe people talk about TripAdvisor on Reddit, and Reddit doesn't block scraping, right? They have a very accessible API to get data. So we can say something about, like, you know, TripAdvisor through Reddit data. I did the same thing. Like I monitored Spotify consumption behavior through a third-party plugin, you know, that kind of broadcasts this information publicly on the web. So, you know, be creative, don't default. You know, you can get data in various ways. And most importantly, consider alternatives to scraping. Everybody equates web data with web scraping, and this is just too narrow. In fact, APIs are going to be the most, like, you know, important technology in the next years still, and maybe it already is, to, like, you know, foster data exchanges between companies rather than just getting data. APIs are there to stay, to not only exchange data but also algorithms. You know, just think about Google Cloud, the Cloud Vision API. Think about various machine learning APIs with AWS. Just yesterday, a firm contacted me, and they were asking me whether I could offer more insights on cloud computing and APIs for my courses, because they feel you need that knowledge when you come on the job market, and would actually increase, you know, your value at the job market. And actually, they want to save time teaching you this. They want me to teach it to you a little earlier, right? So, you know, this is a key technology. Use the knowledge that you've gained to you know, deepen that technology a little bit. And then scoping the data context is another really important thing that you need to do. because like you look at a website and you think it's always been like this, but actually the website is changing. Just consider like Pulse, right? So we used Pulse in this class to monitor your learning progress, right? But Pulse didn't look like this when you started using it. Now, if I analyze this data, let's say your participation data, then I would have to understand how Pulse developed while you were already using it. To control for change in visuals, to control for the introduction of the leaderboard. I can run studies on like understanding what the introduction of the leaderboard did to your participation. But I can only do this when I actually understand how the website has evolved. And this is even more true with the big platforms that you're interested in, right? All right. Let's navigate to the design challenges, right? So there are like 4 things that you typically have to do. What information do you want to get, for which seed, and from which pages, which seeds to use, at what frequency to gather your data, and how to process the data while you're collecting it. And these are the 4 key challenges. And I got a couple of issues that, pertain to some of these challenges, right? So if people try to scrape Amazon.com and they go to, I don't know, some product, what they will get is, they will get the title of the product and the reviews. And then that's it. That's kind of where people most stop thinking, because that's kind of what they have been, seeing appear in papers or on, blogs or something. But it doesn't mean that this is all the data, or even the most, inspiring data to get. Actually, not so many people conducted studies on Q&As on Amazon, although the data has been around there. There's a whole page dedicated to it where you can, scrape this information. This is like more surprising data, and you can monitor it over time, and you can observe, whether it gets any upvotes or not, and what actually makes things helpful and what not. I mean, there are like so many things that you could potentially do with this if you stop with the defaults, just using valence and the text of a product or something like this, right? So look for the surprising information. Look out for new variables, but also check whether they actually measure what they're supposed to measure. Like sometimes these variables are poorly updated. Sometimes metrics are not available in real time. Sometimes metrics are not available historically, such as the sales string of Amazon, which would require you to increase the frequency of your extraction methods to be able to capture that data at a desired frequency. Spend time mapping your navigation path is another really important lesson, right? Look, let's think about Amazon, right? Like, how do we navigate through this page? Like, for example, you can get the rating on this product page, but there's also another rating section, I think, customer reviews. Probably there should be some section where I can actually see all of those customer reviews, and you could see all reviews. This page, right? It's a different page, and it gives you slightly different information, but it also gives you the average rating that you would have gotten from the main page. So think about, like, from which page do you want to get information? And then start fiddling around with the URL to understand how you can iterate through multiple pages. Building a good navigation path is crucial to your extraction design. Consider whether real-time data collection is required, right? So if the data on the site is not available historically, or if the data has inaccurate timestamps, a real-time data collection is warranted. And then check whether algorithmic biases are present. Well, actually, the fact that I clicked on this little caret is not by coincidence. In fact, when my oldest daughter was born, somebody gave us not this carrot, but one of those stuffed toy carrots. And that kind of turned out to be her favorite stuffed animal. And yeah, so the fact that Amazon, oh, by the way, I need to sign in, otherwise I'm losing you guys in a bit. Or does it work? Well, maybe not. So the fact that I click on this little carrot is because probably I browsed for this carrot like a year ago or more, right? So there is algorithmic bias because I, as a researcher, access Amazon.com, but Amazon knows whatever I've looked on before. So if I use my own account to generate data, it's going to be generalizable to the world of hummus and not to the world of an average consumer. This is a problem, right? So watch out for this. Clear your cookie history. Really make sure that you're capturing data which is not personalized to you, right? If you're getting sponsored products, that is so personalized to my own browsing history. So, you know, maybe you want to rent a virtual computer and run your scraper there because then it's going to be anonymous again. You know, think about it. What are other design challenges? Other design challenges is like, you know, how long does the data collection really run, right? If you want to get data on everybody on the site, your scraper is going to run for years, which you can't afford, right? How to seed and what are the implications of seeding for the generalizability? For example, if you want to get data from a social network and you have a page capturing the most recent users of that network, your study is only generalizable to those users that were active on the day when you scrape the seeds. Now, suppose you're scraping the seeds on a Sunday or, you know, and let's just think, you know, that's a weekend day, right? And maybe other users tune into the platform during the weekdays. Then your sample is not generalizable. It's not generalizable of the population of the website users. It's just generalizable to those people that log into the site on a Sunday, right? I have problems coming up with a good example of where that would like be a case. Like, let's say maybe stock data, right? Like maybe stock sites, they're more like visited by like professional users on weekdays because they do it for work, and more by leisure investors on the weekend, you know, something like this. So I would make a case for, well, let's gather seeds for an entire week, because then we have a generalizable population of visitors that go to the site at a week. At what frequency to extract the data is another important decision. And something that I have seen in your project a lot was, struggles with deciding how to process the data on the fly. So I met some teams that try to parse all the data from the website at the fly, not from the website, even from an API. Whereas it's much smarter to just dump all of the JSON objects that you get from an API into a new line separated JSON file, and then just have a second script that parses this information in nice files. Because that way you keep all of the data, and even if your parsing code is bad, you can still correct it because you have the original data right there. So during the duration of this course, I curated some new code snippets which are on my GitHub, or just.github.com, and I'll put the link in the chat, and I'll keep on posting code snippets as they come. And just check it out, because sometimes you'll find some cool information that may be useful for your project. And one of those examples is how to parse on the fly, I think. Yeah. Other design challenges. We have to balance exposure to legal risk. And one of the ways in which you can do that is to argue for a strong scientific purpose of what you do, right? So if you run a scraper because you want to boost the sales of products that you're selling yourself, you will probably have a hard case convincing anybody about the societal value of what you do. So in my research, I always make sure I have a strong societal component so that I could defend in public taking data of which some may argue, maybe it's unethical to scrape public profiles, right? But then I always make the case from, it's public information. I don't log in. That's important too. And it's for a big societal purpose that I do it. It helps. What's the scale and scope, right? Do you get all of the data, or just getting data on a small sample? What's the running time? How much load will you cause on the service of the people that you're scraping? Do you actually get data that represents their entire database? By the way, don't do it. You're just copying their entire thing. They don't like it. But if you're just taking a small fraction, a small product category, whatever, people will be less concerned that the data you take would potentially harm them. What's the location of the data provider and their users? You know, the moment you're touching users based in the EU, GDPR things apply, right? So you got to take care of this. Maybe there are legislations where it's a little more scraping friendly. So you can consider that as you build your scraper. Or you could filter out e-users on the fly, right? So if they're like country names, you could just like filter for countries for which the GDPR doesn't apply. I don't know, you know, you can make filters and mold your data collection to become more legally compliant. And then you could just always ask for a go decision from the provider. You just send them an email, tell them what you're doing. You know, maybe they're just fine. Check the robots.txt is another really good option to see whether they want to be scraped or not. And then what is also important is how you manage your data. If you put all of your passwords and the user data with, you know, which are non-anonymized on GitHub, that's very bad, right? If you keep the data private and anonymize the data, then it's way more acceptable. So, you know, in the paper, in the web scraping paper, there is a lot of legal advice. There's also a table in the web appendix, and I strongly encourage you to take a look at it. We've had some questions on this exam last year about the legal things, and I just realized not many people took a good look at this in the paper. So please do so. And then what are my lessons learned about extraction? As I saw you develop your skills, I realized prototyping is extremely important, and that's where the fun starts, because you run into problems and you can actually, you know, give constructive feedback when you see code. One of those things some teams struggled with, way less than last year actually, is to use requests in Beautiful Soup or Selenium. And a couple of teams did end up using Selenium, but many teams were actually managing just fine with Beautiful Soup and requests. What extraction method to use? Do you extract data with tags, with CSS selectors, with class names? Like, how do you actually capture the data, and how stable are these selectors? Some of you use scheduling, some of you used environmental variables to hide your password. So this is all very important as you embark on not only web scraping projects, but any coding projects, right? You don't want your master password to be on GitHub. No, really not an option. Some of you had to revise navigation paths, and comments are always very helpful to include in your code too. And then the final lesson learned here is that start early with your documentation. Just start with a template, and, you know, keep on, you know, keep that template up whenever stuff encounters, and keep on filling it in. Don't do it at the very last moment, because you'll forget about all of the details, even if it's just a very short time of like 7 weeks in which you produced your data set. A tip for you guys is to generate some plots and descriptive statistics. In the grading of the oDCM project, there's a little section about it. So please don't miss it, because otherwise it's really hard to judging, you know, what's in the data. So this is in data inspection, for which you can get 10% of your grade, okay? And as you write this documentation, think as being a data supplier. You supply data that others can use in the future to conduct research. So don't just narrow down on one research question and limit it like this. Okay, let's look ahead, right? I think it's important that we recognize some of the limitations of web scraping. What do you think are limitations of web scraping? Let's hear your thoughts. What do you think you cannot do with web scraping? What's the bottleneck? Or is it the method to use for everything?
Measure reasons for certain behavior of customers.
What's that? Oh, the reasons. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's hard to figure it out. Yes. Give me some more.
No historical data?
Well, depends on the site, Paulina.
Yeah, but if you want to scrape the website, you get what's there currently, and you can schedule for the future, but not for the past.
Well, on Amazon, all the reviews are available for all products, except the ones that got deleted.
Yeah, but what I mean, you don't know how the website looked in the past.
No, you do.
Like,
you can go to archive.org, right? And look at the website of Tilburg University. No, let's take uwt.nl in 2004. So sometimes that's also part of challenging your boundaries, right? So archive.org is an extremely awesome tool. It's being used in research, but I think it can be used way more. So I love this website, by the way. So maybe you play around and send me screenshots of the most, ridiculously looking website, historical website. That would be amazing. But yes, Paulina, in general, you're right in the sense that, yes, you can go back internally, right? But when the data, sometimes there are ways to still get historical data. But it's true, like some of the data you will never get if you don't scrape in real time. Another thing is that, let me go to this point. Web data seems like clickstream data, but it's not. So clickstream data is the data that is internally available at a company. Like it's kind of where they see where you click, where they see when you get an error, when, all of that kind of thing, whether they see that you buy a product. But web data, our web data, that's just what we can publicly see on a website. So it's different, right? I don't see whether you've bought a product, right? I just see the sales rank of a product. I can only see what I can only get what I see. Clickstream data captures data about the same thing, but they have the actual data, the actual raw data that powers this website. And some of the limitations are also of legal nature, right? Sometimes it's just a no-go to proceed with a scraping project. And I hope that you will realize these roadblocks and refrain from it when it is not suitable. So what are potential applications of scraping? A very low-hanging fruit is to already start collecting data for your master thesis. And right now, I already supervise some theses from students that took this course in previous editions that kind of develop their code to become even better to be used in a master thesis. You can tell my colleagues that you have these skills and not do it for me, but do it for another research project. Actually, your skills are so valuable, people will love to work with you. So talk about it, If they talk about their research, suggest them a data source that they could scrape, and you get a conversation here. So be open and tell people that you have this, because not many people know this. So another tip is start the data collection as soon as possible and use the data later, because that way you can build a big data set, potentially with historical data, right? Like from, let's say, March, April, May, June, July, and then in August, you start writing your thesis, something like that, right? Data collections take a long time, so you can try it. If you want to run your data collection in the cloud, by the way, you could just use one of the building blocks on Tilburg Science Hub to learn how you can use your own virtual computer in the cloud to do this. It's not for scraping here, but it's, and it talks about like, it actually is, it's a full-fledged tutorial. Yeah, it teaches you how to run scripts. So rather than like doing this, you can run your scraping code. I put the link in the chat, okay? So explore it. It's pretty much fun. And maybe some of you have discovered talent and interest in doing research. So, talk to me if you think research is something that you're passionate about. Tilburg has a good reputation in research, so maybe you can develop your skills more. And in any case, data has been crucial to my career, because without web data, I probably wouldn't have been in this field. So it's really data access that made me interested in marketing. There are a bunch of academic opportunities from, what we can study, new phenomena that otherwise couldn't be captured, studying more diverse populations, or generating realistic stimuli. There's an entire section devoted on this in the web scraping paper, The Fields of Gold. So, take a look at it. We cannot only make advancement from what we study, but also how we study it. So, for example, unleashing the potential of real-time data collections to, generate cool data maybe run our own field experiments. We can even program our own APIs and then ask firms to use our APIs for some cool algorithms that we've developed, and then start manipulating the API and run our own experiments. This discussion is in the paper. If you have questions, you can reach out to me, and I'm happy to discuss these things. But so there's an official course evaluation coming up, like with DPrep, I just quickly want to give you a little pitch of how I use course evaluations in the past. One of the outcomes of my course evaluations is the development of Pulse. It hasn't been around like 2 months ago, but students kind of felt detached from the course a bit. It was hard to follow. I would never know where students are standing in terms of their knowledge development. So Pulse came into existence, and I hope you enjoyed using it, and I have a bunch of plans on how to develop it further. So yeah, let's see how that goes. I allocated substantially more time to coaching sessions, and I think actually we had enough coaching sessions. So I feel like you're good. You're in a good shape. The advanced tutorials were once part of the mandatory course load. They're now optional, and there's way more time on onboarding. I actually felt the course started a little slow with the project in any case, because we spent like 2 weeks discussing the project's ideas, but maybe it was just fine. So let me know what you think about it. And like with DPrep, course evaluations are critical to my career. If I seek promotions, people are going to look at my course evaluations, and if I suck, I will not make it. So I really would like to encourage you to fill out the course evaluation, even if you hated this course, because A, it helps me to improve the course for next year and get better evaluations. And if you liked it, also let me know and show some appreciation, because I put really a lot of effort in this. So the link is here, and you can fill out the evaluations up to like a day before the exam or something like this. And then there's also another evaluation about my exam afterwards, right? But use the link right now to fill it in. It would be amazing to read your feedback. Thanks so much. What are the next steps? So first of all, you got to hand in your projects. Please hand it in a way that I can make it publicly available. Take out any passwords, remove unnecessary files. If you don't want your name to be on the web and associated with this, take out your name. I will be able to link your I will be able to link your name, your name, and thus your grade by the team number, right? So if you don't want your last name to be on this submission, that's totally fine. Or if you want to completely take out names. And don't try to make statements that are too bold. Sometimes I read like submissions and students claim they're rescuing the world with their data submission, which they clearly are not, right? So like be a little more realistic about what it is that your data can do and cannot do. Mitch, you got a question. Do you have a code to evaluate? Yes, I do. Do you mean like a grading rubric kind of thing? So yes, I do. So it's here. Maybe that's the one, right? So I kind of explain how I grade this. Is this what you're asking? Not quite sure. So let me know in the chat, please. And then also, I will invite you to self-peer assessment. You got to fill in 5 questions about your own performance and the performance of team members, but I still have to program the app for this. But eventually I will have to, you'll get an invite from me. Oh yeah, Mitch, by the way, is an alumni of Tilburg University. So he was in the program some years ago, and he joined this course. So awesome that you're here, Mitch. Yeah, you probably can't evaluate because we never made it official, your participation in this course. I just shared the Zoom link. Yeah. So sorry, Mitch, but you can send me your comments via email or WhatsApp, okay? All right. Now I'm curious to hear and get your informal feedback. And for this, I'm gonna pause the stream, at least the recording of the stream, to kind of hear what you got to say. All right. So welcome to the second part of today's stream, where we will spend about 15 to 20 minutes talking about the exam, and I'll be able to answer any of your questions. And after that, I'll stop the recording, and I'll have a bit of time left to answer any project-related questions. Yeah, what about the exam? It's a take-home exam, just like data preparation, workflow management. It takes 3 hours to work on this exam. And that's also the time you should allocate to the exam. It takes place on Monday the 4th. So this is the first exam that you're having. DPrep is a day later. You need to register. There's a Google link on the site via this form, and you got to click on it and then register. Put down your name, and I'll add you to Test Vision. Like with DPrep, there are 2 parts. The first part is just open for 1 hour, randomized questions. You can't go back and forth between questions. There's a lot of time pressure on this. That's the tough part. The second part is more about practice, practice about the practical stuff. It's also tough in the sense that you need to like actually scrape or use an API, do something with those skills, but there are just like 2 or 3 questions on that part. Whereas the other one has like maybe like, I don't know, 15 questions. I don't know, the details are on this page, right? So first part, time pressure and smaller questions, can't go back and forth. Second part, more broader, exploration, getting stuck with your scraping code, debugging scraping code, and yeah, kind of developing it from there. You'll work on your own computer at home or wherever you have your computer. I only grade things that are being submitted in Test Vision. It's particularly important for this one, right? So I'll ask you to scrape data. You got to upload the data or zip it and then upload it to Test Vision. I don't accept any submissions via email. You have to upload it in the system. Upload the correct files. If I ask you for a Jupyter notebook, don't upload a CSV file. If I ask you for a Jupyter notebook, don't rename your data set as an IPyNB and upload that data set. I've seen it happening all the time. I look at the files that you sent me, right? And if this is a file that doesn't make sense, you will not get any points. I will typically, for my questions, always have a grading guideline to allocate partial points, right? So the question is, hey, scrape some data. There will always be subpoints, even if you don't, submit a working notebook that does it. You can still score points. So give it your best shot at doing so. Always start from example code. Just start, using one of my tutorial snippets and edit it from there. Sometimes I give you a code snippet that works and you need to extend it, or I give you a code snippet that doesn't work and I'll ask you to correct it so it works, right? So there are very, very, very many versions of things that I can do in these parts. Some of those questions are in the example question section. Yeah, how do you best prepare for it? Having your skills down in scraping is one of the most important things, but something that I really strongly encourage you to is to know the paper inside out. Of course, you'll open the paper on your computer during the exam, but if you don't know where to look for stuff, like Control F to find and search in this paper will not be enough, because you have to see the bigger picture. I do not only ask knowledge questions, I also ask you to explain that you understand these things. And if you just know that there's a paper that talks about this, you won't have the time to build the comprehension during the exam, right? So do that before. The example questions are on this site, so please go through it in your own time and ask questions about it if you have them. The site's been up, so I'll quickly take your questions in just a bit. There's a practice test on Test Vision, which you should take. So the exam looks like a typical Test Vision exam. It has an instruction page. That's about how the instruction page looks like. It explains you what part this is, and then you get 60 minutes to work on this. If you click on ready, you confirm to submit your exam for grading, which is the most prominent mistakes that students do. They submit stuff for grading and they don't kind of work through all of those questions. By the way, in this part of last year's exam, there were 12 questions on the first part. You see the points indicated up there. So with this part of the exam, I think you can score 40 points in total, something like this. So in terms of relative weight, the second part is more important than the first part. And this is one of the questions that pops up, and which was part of the exam. Imagine you're scraping data from a website with a lot of international visitors. Can you suggest a file encoding to ensure the data can be stored well? So what would you answer be on this one? Too easy, too hard? You must have seen it passing by. You see something in the chat. Exactly. Max, good question. Good answer. UTF-8, UTF-16. One of those things along these lines, if you're storing international characters. Yeah. And then you click on volgende or next. You don't click on klaar. Klaar means ready. Ready means you hand in the exam for grading and you're just going to get 2 points. And that will kind of make you fail, right? Because there are more points to score on this exam. And the second part looks, you know, just about the same, as in same kind of format, same kind of title page, but you have fewer questions to work on, but, you know, rather larger questions. And by the way, the question types that I ask on the second part are actually spelled out here, right? There's a small coding task, which concerns parsing, fixing errors, or running existing code, for which you can plan about 20 minutes of your time. There's a small essay to form judgment about a particular situation, such as a legal situation, or to recommend a website or API for a particular business problem, or, you know, do some sample size calculations and defend those. And then there is a large coding task, which requires you to scrape data or from a website or use an API to retrieve data. And that really is a big one for like 1.5 hours that you can spend on this approximately. So that's about that. So I encourage you to go through those example questions, and we have a bit of time taking your questions now. So are there any questions about the exam? I'll take questions also in the chat if you don't have the opportunity to talk right now.
I have one question, Hannes.
Yes.
Yeah, zometeen.
I hear you.
Yeah. So about the exam, what was our question? Oh yeah. So for the code, there obviously, if you write a code, there is multiple ways of doing it. There is like multiple right answers to get to the same result.
Sure.
Is there like a fixed code that you have to apply, or is it just it works so you succeed?
It works and then you succeed, but I'm not gonna check like only for the final answer. Like usually I'd like look at the code. Okay, so what I do is I ask you to submit code mostly through Jupyter notebooks. Okay, so what I'll do in grading them is I'll download all of these notebooks and then I open each notebook independently, right? So one of the things that you got to watch out for is that if you develop your own code, all packages need to be loaded. You know, I'm pretty okay putting the import requests there myself, but you're already losing points if the packages are not there, right? So make sure the code runs. And one way in which you can check your notebook runs is by restarting your kernel, right? So let's say we have a Jupyter notebook. Let me open one here right now. And I'll show you quickly what I mean by it. So let me just have a dummy notebook and right. So what students many times do is they start and then request.get. Let me get the Google homepage, and this is the content, something like this, right? And then you scrape, right? But then through revisions of code, the import request kind of gets lost, or I don't know, you're cleaning up and you forget it, right? And then you run it and it still runs because you have loaded the request library. Right? But what you forgot is it's not there anymore. So how you should test code before you submit is you click on kernel and you click on restart. And then you're running things. And then you see and get the error that the request library isn't there. So that's something that you should watch out for. What is even best is if you correct this thing and then restart and clear all output. So all of the stuff goes away. And then you click on run all, probably it's cells run all, because then the entire thing runs through, and if it runs through without a problem, after restarting your kernel, it will work on my computer. Okay. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
It does, yes, thank you.
Good. So do you have any other questions?
Like on the day of the exam, I go in front of my computer. Where do I actually open the exam?
Receiving your exam via test vision on the day of the exam. You click on this link.
Oh, you click on that link. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now I know again.
Alrighty. Then I will stop the recording, and I'll be available for any remaining project questions. Let me take the moment to thank you for taking this course. So I really had a good time with your group, and I almost regret it's over. Time went by quite fast. I mean, I have one final slide I want to show you. So I think no, I can't. I need to go to the back. So I hope that we will eventually meet in Tilburg again. I'll be in Tilburg mostly on Mondays, maybe also another day. So, you know, just send me a text if you want to swing by my office, and, you know, we can have a chat or coffee or whatever and talk about your projects or whatever you're interested in, right? University is so much more than just sitting behind your screen. Trust me, it's so much more fun if you actually got to meet out, you know, and like, I don't know, brainstorm, and I don't know, many good things happen. So what you need to do is you need to add me to LinkedIn if you haven't done so, because I'll post jobs, I'll post invites for skill development, and all kinds of stuff. You can follow the YouTube channel and maybe also my GitHub page to receive updates about code that I post or snippets that I do. If you're passionate about open source development and kind of contributing to one of my initiatives, that would be amazing. The links are on this page too. I'll post it in the chat so you can copy paste. And yeah, I mean, most importantly, you need to tell people you got these skills, because these skills are valuable and people will love the fact that you know this. And Python is so much more, maybe that's my final remark, than just scraping. By the way, you can do anything with Python. So keep on developing your Python skills. You just like learned a little bit of it, and it'll gonna take you 10 years to learn it, you know, really well. So, you know, keep on pushing, keep on using it. So that way you master it. Okay, so thanks a bunch for being in my class. I wish you all the best in your careers, and I hope to see many of you in Tilburg very soon. And I'll stop my recording now, but I'll be here for questions related to your team assignments.